Are outlines engraved in stone, never to be changed, always to be followed? No. You're going to see how an outline is a living, growing, breathing document that is very necessary to have at the beginning, but is rarely the same at the end when you finish your book. Hi, I'm Dan Janal, the author of Write Your Book in a Flash. I'm a ghostwriter, book coach, and developmental editor, and I can help you write your book no matter where you are in the writing process. And I have a network of colleagues who can help you with marketing, book production, and all the other tasks to help you write your book. Okay, let's look at the outline. You must have an outline before you start your book. If you don't have an outline, you don't know where you're going, you'll never get there, you'll never finish your book. Just very, very difficult to do. There are some people in fiction writing who don't have an outline. That's okay. When you're writing a nonfiction book, you really do need an outline to keep you on track. But that doesn't mean that the outline is going to stay the same, because your ideas will change as you work, as you do more research, as you do more interviewing, as you do more writing. Your ideas will crystallize, they'll form, they'll change, they'll be different, maybe a little bit, maybe a lot from your original ideas. And that's perfectly natural. That means you're growing, that means you're learning, that means your ideas are getting better, you're refining your ideas, you're creating, you're imagining, you're ideating. You are getting better in every way, and your book is getting better in every way. That way, your outline changes. Let me tell you a quick story. I was working as a developmental editor for a leadership coach who was writing yet another leadership book. And the first chapter was your typical boring leadership stuff. And it was okay. It wasn't really earth-shattering. It didn't do much for me, but even more, it didn't do much for him. When he wrote his first chapter, it was his story and he told it well, but I guess he wasn't inspired by it, and neither was I. And we all agreed that this probably isn't going to inspire anyone else. So I said, think long and hard about what kind of book you want to write. And he came back the next week with a dozen pages of poetry that inspires leaders. It was revolutionary. No one had ever done it before. And he was really jazzed by it. And he had a real talent for it. There was a meter and a rhyme and a syntax to it that just made it flow. And it worked. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I said, write more. And he did. And week after week after week, he wrote poems about leadership and gratitude and attitude and other ideas that would inspire leaders. And there was very little text, as you would say. It was really in the form of poetry. And while the grammar was a little bit off and the spelling was a little bit off and the punctuation was a little bit off, it all worked as a whole. So the copiers can clean up all that stuff. But he just free-formed things from his brain and he let it all out. And he wrote a wonderful, wonderful book that is truly unique. There are millions of leadership books. There are no leadership books about inspiring poetry that is very accessible. When you think poetry, sometimes you think, oh, I can't understand this stuff and whatever, but it really did work. It was wonderfully easy to read. It was inspiring and it fulfilled his goal. And now he can write any kind of book that he wants. He can speak on any stage and start reading his poetry from his book, and people would buy the book and see him as the thought leader and see him as the person who could inspire their employees as well. So that was really, really cool. And it was fun to be with a project like that. That's probably the most extreme example of changing an outline that I've seen, because he really did change the entire book from a narrative book to a inspiring poetry kind of book, which was kind of cool. But that just shows you how wild and free you can be with all of your outlining. Now, most people will write a very simple outline. So let's say 10 chapters, the first chapter, is an introduction of the problem, an introduction to who they are, so you get to know, like, and trust them. And the last chapter is a call to action chapter. We could have a summary of the book itself and what to do next, how to hire you, or how to buy more of your products, which is good for a consulting book, for a book, which is very good for a person who's a consultant or a person who's looking to get new business from the book. And the middle chapters are the problems that you're trying to solve and the lessons you are imparting with people. So that's a good outline for a book. Now, having said that, your ideas can change within that outline. Let's say you have 8 problems that you like to solve, and you put those in the book. And those are your starting outline. And think that's pretty good. I can solve these 8 problems. And think to yourself, do my clients have these 8 problems? They may have 6 of those. They may not have all 8. There may be some, so you're missing people, because the only reason people will read the book is to solve a problem that they have. Okay, if they don't know they have a problem, well, that's another story. You might look at those problems and say, there are some of these problems that I could solve, but they're a real pain in the butt to solve. I really don't want to solve those kinds of problems anymore. I could solve them, but I don't want to solve them. It's just not fun. So you take those out, because if you have them in there, you will attract the people who have those problems, and they'll say, hey, can you help me solve this problem? You say, oh no, not again. So you don't want those problems in your book. Then there are the problems that don't pay very well. And you say, I really don't want to attract those kinds of people either, because I could solve this problem, but it takes more time and energy, and it's a low paying opportunity. And why bother attracting those people as well? So you're triaging along the way. You're thinking about what would be fun, what pays well, what attracts the kinds of clients you like to work with, and that would be fun. Now, you could also have a chapter in there that attracts the kind of work you like to do that may not pay well. That's okay, because it's fun to do. Maybe there's a philanthropy angle there. Maybe it's a giving back angle there. Maybe it's a contribution angle. That's fine. You can do that too. We're not all about making tons of money. We're about helping the world and helping people as well. So you can use your chapters to do that too. And that happens with the outline. Now, you may find as you do more research, there are more ideas that you hadn't thought of when you wrote your outline. For example, you might have said to yourself, I'm going to have a chapter on employee engagement, and I'm going to tell a certain story. And then you go on the internet and you find this really inspiring story that you quote and give attribution to, of course, and say, I'm going to tell this story instead because it really is a much better story. It really proves my point so much better. Or you might be looking at your stories and writing your stories, then showing them to a developmental editor like me. And I could look at it and say, you were trying to tell a story that proved X, but it really didn't prove X. It's really a story about Y. And you might want to change that story to something else. Or you may want to move this story to a different chapter. Or you may have too many stories in this chapter and not enough stories in another chapter. So for those reasons, you very well may want to revise your outline again. So you're constantly revising your outline. How else would you revise your outline? Well, let's say you're done with the first draft and you decide to have it reviewed by your peers or your target readers. We call them beta readers. And they come back and after reading your book and they say, I really like something, or I don't like something, or you left out something, or your book would be made better if you included something, or here's some statistics, or here's a story, or here's some artwork that would improve. You say, oh, you're right. Or they might say, this thing that you mentioned is really out of date. It's been disproven. I'm surprised you didn't know about it. But you may want to revise that as well. Or the current thinking is totally changed. So there are many reasons why you may want to update your outline to reflect what's going on in the world, with current events, with what's going on in your industry, and such like that. So it's very important that you do think about changing your outline and keeping an open mind. And that's another problem that some people have when they look at their outline. They say, this is it. I'm sticking with it no matter what. And that could be the kiss of death, because if you're too rigid, you may not be in line with what the world needs at that time. And if you miss your mark, then you've wasted your time. So it's good to think about what's going on, do more research, talk to more people, find out the nuances of what's happening today, so you are in line with what is happening, so your book is totally relevant to people, so they can get the most out of it, and you can get the most out of it, and you can get the value that you want for yourself, and you can bring value to the people, your readers, so they can really benefit from reading your book and engaging you to take them to the next step. You're going to want to watch the other videos we have in the outlining series so you can write your book in a flash.